Fantastic. So again, thanks so much for joining us for the case for ending local and state entanglement with ICE. We're going to go ahead and get started. And my name is Luis Ojeda, pronouns he, him. I'm a region organizing and program manager with the ACLU of Northern California, and I'm based in Fresno. We were supposed to have interpreting today, but I don't think the interpreter is on, unfortunately. We do have the slides that are translated in Spanish as well, and then we'll make sure to send those out to folks as well. And so if anybody did need Spanish interpreting, we'll be able to send those out after. And so si estás aquí y estabas, querías acceder la interpretación en español, desafortunadamente no tenemos intérprete hoy, pero sí tenemos la pantalla va a estar traducida ya en español, entonces también podemos mandar esto para poder mirar esa información al otro tiempo. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Just to give you all a quick overview of the agenda and what we're going to be discussing today. We've got lots on the agenda, but it's a lot of really important information that we're going to be sharing with folks. So we're going to be beginning with just doing a quick introduction to the problem, talking about ICE transfers. We'll hear a firsthand account of the harm that ICE transfers cause, and then we'll move into a case study on the ACLU's report of the Central Valley. And then we'll also hear from Enrico, who will give another firsthand account of some of the harms. And then we'll move in at the end to talk about the Vision Act at the end. So before we get started, we do want to give everyone an opportunity to just introduce themselves in the chat. So we'd love to hear from you all. Where are you joining us from? If you could drop your name, your pronouns, and also which city you're joining us from. We'd love to just see where everyone is joining us from and where you all are coming from. So we're going to just pause for a moment, let folks introduce themselves. So please, if you haven't done that already, please just drop it into the chat. And then additionally, as we proceed with the slides, if at any point in time you have a question, we're just going to ask folks to also drop those in the chat, and I'm going to be compiling them and then saving them for the end. And so some of your questions might get answered as we move through the slides, but I also want to just flag if you have other questions that aren't being answered while we go through the slides, please just drop them into the chat. And then again, we'll compile them and then answer them at the end during the Q&A session. So again, if you haven't introduced yourselves yet, please just drop your name, pronouns, and where you're joining us from, just so that we can get a sense of who's in the room tonight. Perfect. Getting some intros. Helen's joining from Livermore. Some folks from Ventura, Kern County, Fresno, Bakersfield. Thanks everyone for starting to introduce yourselves. We're so grateful for you to be here. Perfect. So with that, we're going to go ahead and advance the slides and continue on with our presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Bun, who's going to talk about the problem of ICE transfers.
Thank you. I'm Chanton Bun. I go by Bun, formerly incarcerated, directly impacted by ICE, and I'm the community advocate at Asian Law Caucus. The problem with ICE is that ICE transfer is after a person complete their full term, get a parole board date, and even the governor's okay that they're no longer a threat to the community. Instead of coming home, immigrants are transferred to ICE just because of what they've done and was convicted for 20, 30 years ago. And it doesn't reflect on the transformation, the rehabilitation, or anything that they have done while incarcerated to help the community. Often enough, we don't know, the public doesn't know what is ICE transfer. How do you get transferred from ICE, or how does ICE get you in custody out of CDCR or jails? I illustrated this small illustration to show the course of an ICE transfer and a course of a person that has been sent to CDCR and completed their terms and was hoping to be reunited with their family, but end up being transferred to ICE and detained. Hit a video.
What are ICE transfers? I'm Chanton Bun. I'm the Yuri Kochiyama Fellow at Asian Law Caucus. I illustrated this explainer on how California prison system uses our tax dollar to double punish incarcerated immigrants and refugees. Upon arriving in the California state prison system, CDCR regularly notify ICE of anyone they suspect is foreign-born. CDCR helps ICE place an immigration detainer request or hold on the community member, and then schedule an ICE interview at the prison. While the community members serve time, they focus on self-help programs, education, and their own healing. As they get closer to being released, CDCR notify ICE of their release date. CDCR schedule a release time that is convenient for ICE to arrest that community member. On what is supposed to be the community member's first day of freedom, CDCR instead facilitate their ICE arrest at the prison. Disregarding their community ties, personal transformation, or time served, instead of reuniting with their family and community, they are cruelly transferred to an ICE detention facility for deportation. The Vision Act would end this harsh double punishment of incarcerated immigrants and keep families and communities together. Hashtag Stop ICE Transfer. Here's how you can support. Contact your California representative at bit.ly/support Vision Act or learn more at bit.ly/Vision Act.
Thank you. Um, next
What
slide,
are
please.
ICE transfers?
The next slide. Why does ICE rely on transfers? ICE relies on local and state law enforcement to force multiply to help fuel their deportation machine. For example, an estimated 80% of people in one immigration detention center in California were eligible to be released from CDCR custody, but were transferred by the state prison to ICE, and transfer are commonly voluntary by CDCR. Next slide, please. The harms of ICE transfer. The harms of ICE transfer are traumatizing to families. They violate due process rights, subject immigrants to double punishment, tear apart families and communities, and burden the state and local resources. ICE transfer, with these few words, ICE transfer are even worse on the person that is experienced that transfer, the stress, the trauma, and the hopelessness of ever seeing their family again. Thank you. And I would like to introduce Salesh Prasad for our next presentation.
Good evening. My name is Saabs Prasad. I would like to share a little bit about my story with ICE. First of all, I want to share that I had a very, very rough childhood. Um,
Sorry, Salesh, I think we should be able to hear you now.
This is Angela, just jumping in. Salesh, I can't hear you. Maddie too, I can't hear you if you're patching in, Salesh.
yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
There you are. Okay, great. Hi, Salesh. You cut
Hi.
out for a moment. If you feel free to go ahead and start again.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Saabs Prasad. I want to start by sharing a little bit about myself. I had a very, very rough childhood. I joined the gang at a very young age. I dropped out of school and started to make bad decisions and choices, which led me to commit crimes and unfortunately take someone's life. I served 3 decades in state prison. While there, I educated myself by earning a GED, over a dozen vocational trades, and I have also become an artist. I taught myself how to draw. I specialize in custom greeting cards. On August 19th, I was supposed to go home to my family. I wanted so badly to hold my mom. I hadn't seen her in over 3 years. Because CDCR notified ICE of my release, I will never get to hold her. She passed away on September 28th. Um, ICE wouldn't even let me go see her when she got sick, and she was put on life support. I wasn't allowed to attend her funeral either. What ICE is doing is extremely cruel punishment. Suffer here every day, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. There's a chance that I may never see my family again, and late for me to see and hold my mother again, whom I miss so much every day. And I would like to see this Vision Act passed so that other people won't have to suffer like I am. And I went to the board on April 8th of 2021. That day, I was found suitable by the parole board. CDCR notified ICE that day that I'm going to be released. State psychologist for CDCR stated that my CRA, my comprehensive risk assessment, is low, which means that I pose no threat to public safety. BPH agreed and found me suitable. I took years of therapy to overcome child abuse, domestic violence, substance abuse programs to prove to the board that I have changed. They agreed, yet here I am in ICE detention. Here in ICE detention, support is crucial. Places can and will break a person down. I've seen a lot of people give up hope. At times, I too also wanted to give up. However, I am fortunate that I have a support network. Care about me. Need to really get the Vision Act passed. What they are doing is inhumane because there's a lot of people in here that don't have support like I do. And if I was to be released, I had goals that they didn't give me a chance to. Our nice didn't give me a chance. So I want to pay back to the community that I'm part of. I want to pay back to. I want to help children move forward in life. I want to teach kids how to play sports instead of use drugs or put syringes in their arms or drink or join gangs. I want to be a member of a productive community, and I want to have my own business. I want to live a life, and I want to see this act pass really bad. And what they're doing to us in here, it's really cruel. And thank everybody for being here tonight, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Salesh, for sharing all of that, especially from detention and for overcoming that limitation and being so vulnerable. I really appreciate that. Hi, my name is Maria Romani. I am a staff attorney at the ACLU of Northern California, and I work out of our Fresno office on immigrant rights policy issues that mostly do deal with statewide sort of laws, but my focus and heart is in the Central Valley. And I think I saw some folks that are also joining us from here. So thank you so much for being with us. I wanted to talk a little bit about a report that we published a couple of a couple months ago now, that details the ways in which sheriffs in the Central Valley have continued to work with ICE. And the reason I'm talking about this is because it's a case study for what happens when we don't have a bright line rule, which is what the Vision Act would be introducing. When we live in conservative regions like the Central Valley, law enforcement sometimes functions under this rule of impunity and can get away with things that sometimes violate the law or completely evade the law. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what we discovered in drafting this report. Next slide, please. So this report comes after many years of reviewing public records documents that we had requested from law enforcement. And in reviewing those records, we uncovered that despite our sanctuary laws, which are great, we needed to pass them, those laws do not go far enough. They do not protect everybody in our communities, and the Central Valley is one of them. So what we uncovered is that despite our current laws, law enforcement continues to work with ICE and go out of their ways to find ways to work with ICE. So one way in which they do that is through the shadow transfer system. So under our current law, law enforcement is prohibited from transferring people to ICE unless that person has certain criminal offenses. And what that means is that it then provides wiggle room for how law enforcement interprets who they want to transfer to ICE. Also, under our current law, law enforcement is local law enforcement is required to report to the Attorney General's office anytime they do transfer somebody to ICE and the basis for that transfer. And we've seen that also has been not respected, not followed. And so these shadow transfer systems that we uncovered, and it's not something that the ACLU has necessarily uncovered. I think a lot of folks in the community have known that this happens, but now we have evidence to show the extent to which it happens. What these systems are is that when law enforcement, when sheriffs are about to release somebody who, they finished their sentence, they have sometimes been ordered released by a judge, instead of that person being able to reunite with their families, go back to their communities, they're instead taken into a non-public area of the jail. And through that, that area of the jail, ICE will access that person and arrest that person and detain them. And the reason this is so alarming is because, one, it's unlawful, it's an invasion of the law. That's not what our legislators had in mind when they attempted to limit the number of transfers that would take place. And two, it allows local sheriffs to not report those instances. Those instances are not covered or are not in any way documented. And so sometimes it appears as if local law enforcement is not transferring people to ICE because the numbers appear so low through official reporting, but it's often because of these shadow transfer systems that are in place. Because they're happening in the shadows, there's no documentation of them. And, for a long time, we heard about this because of public defenders telling us, or impacted folks reaching out to us and telling us that this had happened to them. Next slide, please. But, this email, which we got from our Public Records Act request, is an email from the Fresno County Sheriff's staff person to ICE a week before our sanctuary law went into effect. It's an attempt to meet with ICE, planning to meet with ICE in person to talk about ways to circumvent the law, to come up with some way in which they could continue to work together. And so they came up with a quote unquote resolution, which was this shadow transfer system I just went over, where they would release people into this non-public area of the jail so that ICE can continue, working like they were before SB 54. And so next slide, please. In another, sorry, I guess I ended up removing it, but in another email that I sent to the Fresno County Sheriff's Office many months later, after the law was in effect, they admit to having this sort of shadow transfer system in place in multiple counties throughout the valley. It's not just Fresno. So they have it in Tulare, Merced, Madera, and Kings County. So it's not something that's a one-off or one bad cop. It's systemic, and it was a practice, or it's a practice. We don't have anything to counter the fact that this was put in place. And it's still in place, but it's something that continues to exist, and it shouldn't, because again, I don't think that was the intention of the legislators when they passed SB 54. The other thing we noticed is that there's this willingness to continue oversharing information with ICE. So there are limitations in terms of what information local law enforcement should be sharing with ICE, but when given the chance, local law enforcement will give as much as they can to ICE in terms of access to information. And ICE will then sometimes use that information against that person in the removal proceedings. The other thing that's more alarming is this attempt to coordinate when people are released at a time that is most convenient to ICE. And again, this is this is an attempt by sheriffs to stretch the exceptions under the law beyond recognition, beyond what they were intended to be. Next slide, please. So in this slide, one of the emails is from, or I guess both the emails are from a staff member from the Stanislaus County Department's office, the Sheriff's Department office in Stanislaus County, where they email an ICE agent to ask, when is the best time for ICE to pick somebody up, in order to calculate how much time ICE would need to, pick somebody up from the jail. And ICE responds, sometime before 3 o'clock, so that they would have enough time to process that person and then drive them to a local detention center. And again, it's this willingness to work with ICE to bend over backwards for them in order to continue funneling people into the local detention centers, which, if we had these bright line rules, these sorts of communications wouldn't take place, or they shouldn't take place. And we could more readily just educate law enforcement to stop doing this, because it harms communities, it harms people ultimately. And so these are just some of the top findings from our report. We can drop it in the chat during the presentation. I'll be sure to do that. And if folks have questions, I'm happy to answer them after the presentation. But with that, I do want to pass it over to Enrique Cristobal, who will share his firsthand experience of this sort of entanglement between law enforcement and ICE. Enrique served 17 years in CDCR custody before Governor Newsom commuted his sentence. However, instead of joining his family, his community, Enrique was funneled into ICE's custody. There's a huge movement to get him released. And now Enrique is an activist and is fighting for the passage of the Vision Act so that others won't have to go through what he went through. So Enrique, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Maria. Welcome everyone. So I think I'm gonna start with sharing a little bit about the traumatic events that happened in detention center while I was detained. So I'm gonna share a little bit about me. So I spent almost 2 decades in the prison system, being treated as an animal, and I still wonder why I get labeled or treated as a criminal, a gang member, and I often get called illegal alien, in which I refuse to accept. On November 10, 2020, Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, clemency my sentence, which means I was being released, not because of my past, but because of the person I became. I educated myself and then earned a college degree. I got certified as a drug and alcohol counselor. I helped create self-help programs to change the culture in the prison system while I was incarcerated. I look around our communities, and many of our juvenile kids are sent to prison with longer sentences because of lack of education and funds for low-income communities, putting our kids in limbo. Others are struggle with their uncertainty or their legal status. Many juveniles do not know their native land. They were brought to this nation without having any choice. We should have not been subjected to deportation. I was detained at Golden State Annex, a private facility in McFarland, California, waiting for deportation. As I sit there, I was re-traumatized by staff members for a continuous effort in exercising my rights. Let me start informing you about some of the conditions I experienced at Golden State Annex facility, such as cross-contamination due to COVID-19, medical negligence, and retaliation. I arrived at Golden State Annex, and after so many lives have been lost due to COVID-19, I wonder why staff was keep putting detainees at risk with this daily virus. Detainees at Golden State Annex facility are being moved around to different units without being tested. This can lead to an outbreak that can potentially put detainees' life at risk. How many more detainees needs to die? So each private detention facility enforce safety guidelines to honor other lives has been lost inside these private facilities due to the negligence from staff and more recent anniversary, Mr. Han. On May 17, 2020, due to medical negligence. On February 28, 2020, I submitted a grievance, which is a complaint. The staff were conducting pet searches to all detainees as intimidation tactics, such as reckless behavior, violating social distancing guidelines by USA Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and removal operations, COVID-19 pandemic response requirements. On March 6 of 2021, detainees from A1, including myself, were moved to an unit contaminated and out of order due to having outside contractor workers working on this unit. At my arrival, I noticed multiple things out of order. Immediately, I requested to move back into a safety unit. I felt helpless and afraid due to my health condition, asthma. My request was denied, and facility administrator at this time, Mr. Brochu asked me to grievance it, and I pointed out which the private facility should be abide by one which it calls a PBNDS, a performance-based national detention standard, which they don't apply for them according to them. I submitted grievances on prior violations where they were violating a lot of guidelines with that as well. Can someone inform medical staff at Golden State Annex facility about the danger this population face once we are exposed to this deadly virus? Detainees are refusing to take COVID-19 vaccinations due to the lack of information by medical staff. On March 18, 2021, I was assisting a detainee throwing up uh, due to some of the side effects from the COVID-19 vaccine. In coordination with this medical negligence for not informing detainees about some of the side effects with detainees under other medications or underlying conditions, I immediately request CCIJ, Centro de la Raza Dolores Free Community Service to help detainees in need, which they provide doctors available for detainees' health concerns. This clearly shows that indifference to our safety and health concerns by medical staff at Golden State Annex and ICE agents. I've been requesting to speak with medical director, but my request was denied. According to the director, my health and my safety concerns are not a priority for them. Leaving detainees, including myself, pleading for help and mercy that they will survive through an injustice treatment. Now let me inform you about some of the retaliation detainees experience at Golden State Annex facility. I have been fired from my position twice for exercising my rights. On February 9, 2021, after voicing my concerns for not having been provided proper training and equipment for sanitation workers, according to OSHA, Occupational and Safety and Health Administration, I was denied work. Comments, comments made by staff directing detainees to wear shower shoes if they didn't want their shoes to get wet during cleaning hours. Her direct orders was completely discriminatory, condescending, and a risk to our health and safety. On March 10, 2021, detainees were left out in the rain during outdoor recreation hours by the lieutenant. Golden State Annex private facility do not provide detainees with the proper clothing for such weather conditions. After submitting a grievance, I was informed by Chief of Security if I wanted to stay dry out of the rain for me to purchase proper clothing with my own money, spending my own money. Huh. I stated that a sweater that gets provided by detainees is not for such weather. But what can we do when we're in there with no rights, according to ICE agents and private facilities? And I wonder why. If geo staff and ICE agents would take time to be more compassionate and understand this social injustice, they will know our families are being ripped apart by this social injustice. But they refuse to accept this or understand this concept of family unity. I hope that you can help me voice the lack of social equality. We are people with families and we matter. People such as I do change for the better. You can help me by being our voice, our strength, and our support in this matter. Why keep funding this private prison? How many more detainees need to be murdered by staff negligence? Why keep supporting this abuse Some call it public safety. What about schools, low-income communities, and families losing their homes due to this pandemic? That's public safety for me. Not, not criminals such as these private facilities and us agents that abuse their authority and still make money away from our communities in need. On February 11 of 2022, I was granted immigration relief, and I was asked, nobody should go through what I experienced while in detention center. Governor of California believed in my change and my transformation and the reason why I was released. Please believe in this vision that all I ask is for everyone to believe in it and then stop ICE torture and ICE transfers. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Enrique, for sharing. Maybe we can all take a breath to really allow Enrique's words, Celeste's words to really kind of soak in and let us ruminate and really absorb the words that they shared with us today. So maybe just take one moment to really take in what Enrique, Celeste, and even what Maria shared with the report before I move to the next slide. All right. I think, we really wanted to take in what Celeste and Enrique in particular shared with us in their personal stories about serving time in state prison, CDCR, and then being handed to ICE. I think in both Celeste and Enrique's story, we hear so much of the root causes of why people even get caught up in the incarceration system in the first place. And then, of course, Enrique detailed out all the levels of advocacy that Enrique started inside to try to get better conditions, and how over and over again they were ignored, and how ICE in itself is also such an awful place to be transferred to, especially after you have already been deemed eligible for release. And so this is why we are emphasizing the Vision Act today. The solution to all these harms, all this suffering, and all this unnecessary trauma, one immediate way would be the Vision Act, and this bill would disrupt this collaboration and collusion between local and state law enforcement and ICE. You can go to the next slide. So what would the Vision Act actually do? This bill is so important because it would protect immigrant and refugees communities who have already been deemed eligible for release from state prison or local jail, and protect them from being handed immediately into ICE detention for deportation. And instead, like what both Enrique and Sal have said, they have goals and plans, right? Right after being released, goals to reunite with family so that they don't have to miss significant family events like birthdays and even funerals, and have a chance to rebuild their life and contribute back to the community. This bill would be so important because it would allow for compassion and fairness, and equal treatment of people who have been eligible for release, so that it's not just people who are arbitrarily born here who get a chance to come home. Next slide, please. Actually, you can go back to the last slide. I think a few other things I wanted to share is that the Vision Act is not unprecedented. So on the local county level, many counties have already passed a version of the Vision Act, at least for the local jail. I can just name a few: Los Angeles, San Francisco, Santa Clara, Contra Costa, San Mateo, Santa Cruz, San Joaquin, and Humboldt counties have already stopped ICE transfers on the county level. And then one thing that many people might not know is that the state of Illinois, the state of Oregon have also have their own version of the Vision Act that completely disentangles local and state law enforcement from ICE. And then Washington, D.C. also has their own version. So California is actually behind on this. And it's not unprecedented to have a bill like the Vision Act in California. And this is extra important because of the number of immigrant communities that are residents here in our state. Lastly, I would want to share that in 2021, there was a UCSD poll that looked at different California voters, and there was a survey that asked them about, the values of the Vision Act and the bill itself. And approximately 2/3 of respondents said that they would support or strongly support the Vision Act. And an even larger majority, about 80% of respondents, said that they agree or strongly agree with the values of the Vision Act. So this is something that is important for many California residents. Okay, go to the next slide. So some of you may be wondering, where is the Vision Act today? You may have heard that we launched this current version of the Vision Act in the beginning of 2021. You may have heard a bunch of amazing work that the ICE Out of California Coalition has done to get the bill where it's at. So it started in the Assembly, it went through 3 committees in the Assembly, it passed the Assembly floor, then it went to the Senate, it went through 2 committees without any kind of amendments, and we're now at the Senate floor. So last year, it was parked on the Senate floor. We just needed a few more votes from a couple senators, and we could have gone through the Senate floor, but it got stuck there. And fortunately, we had an opportunity to turn it into a 2-year bill. So we're actually in the same place as last year. And we're, again, kind of just needing a few more senator votes to get it through the Senate. It will go quickly back for something called Assembly Concurrence, and then it will go to the governor's desk. So just a few steps away from the bill becoming law. I'll pass it over to Luis and Lasco.
Hey, everybody. Luis Nolasco, he, him pronouns. I'm a organizer with the ACLU of Southern California. Happy to be here with you all today. So I'm just going to share very quickly what are some action steps that we can all take to sort of be engaged on the Vision Act and what we can do individually to support this legislation and make sure it makes it all the way to the governor's office. So at the moment, there are a handful of senators and legislators that need to be convinced that the Vision Act is an important piece of legislation that needs to be passed now. So those are Senators Hertzberg, Umberg, Roth, Portantino, Eggman, Hurtado, Caballero, and also Assembly members Arambula, Salas, and Gray. So they all need to hear from you as constituents, as residents of California, that this is important to you and that they should support this measure. And so our ask to you all today is to take some time out of your day and reach out to them. So if Maria or someone from the team can just include the link to this action guide in the chat, you can all check it out too. Who here already knows who their state assembly and state senators are? Put like a thumb up emoji or like in the chat, like if you know who they are. Cool. So like folks kind of, yeah, so people know who your elected officials are. If you don't happen to know, or maybe you moved, or maybe you're in another part of California now, you can click this search engine here and it'll tell you who is your legislator. So as you can see here, you can put your address, the city, and it'll tell you who is your senator and who is your assembly member. If your senators are Hertzberg, Umberg, Portantino, Roth, Eggman, Hurtado, Caballero, those are especially important. So you as a constituent, you as a resident of that district, we need you to reach out to them. And so in this guide, we created a sort of a super straight to the point email and call script for you all. So here's a sample email or call email that you can use. And we provided all the information for all of the people that need to be convinced on the Vision Act. So we have Governor Newsom's information, Hertzberg, Roth, Umberg, Portantino, Eggman, Hurtado, Caballero, and then our assembly members. And you can also find all of the emails. These emails are for their staffers. And so they're the people that are constantly listening to community. And as we mentioned, it is so important for you all as constituents to be letting your voice be heard with your elected officials. They need more voices from you and not just, all the opposition or people that might be against this or might have concerns. So we need to do this for our immigrant communities in the state. So it's not a big ask, right? You can do an email, you can do a quick call. And so this is all the information. We provided their Sacramento offices and their district office numbers. So I think it might be a little late in the day for a live person, but you can still call and leave a message, right? So a lot of their offices do have a voicemail system set up, so they will hear your messages even if not a live person sort of picks up. But again, we're providing this information so you all can also, if maybe you want to make a couple of calls during the week, we encourage all of that, right? And at the end, if you can just please, there is a link here. Once you send an email out or make a call, if folks can just sort of let us know how it went. The coalition is tracking, just seeing what are the responses from each office, if they're supportive or anything worthwhile that we should take note of. So there's a link to this logging document here. And so it just put your name and, basically who you contacted and how the call went or how the email went. And then lastly, but not surely, there is a listserv that is basically used to update everybody on what's going on with the Vision Act. So if you would like to sign up, that link is also included in this toolkit towards the bottom. Or if you want to stay connected through, our organization as the ACLU, I have put my information and my colleague Luis Ojeda's information there. So you can also feel free to contact us. Or, my colleagues that are also pushing for the Vision Act, I'm sure they can more than happy be willing to share their emails with everybody here as well, in case you have any more questions. So I think that is this guide. It's pretty straightforward. And what we're going to do now is we're going to give it maybe 5 minutes or so for everybody to send a quick email or make that call. Again, it's super easy, super quick, shouldn't take more than a minute really. But we'll give folks 5 minutes just to, one, if you want to review this guide or maybe look up your representative and then make a call or send that email. And then we're going to circle back and I'm just going to see how folks felt that experience went. All right. Does anybody have any questions regarding the action guide and calling or emailing? And actually, we're going to put up the script too, so to make it easier for you all. If Luis can, other Luis. Just posted it in the chat again. So if folks want to take a minute to just send an email or make a call, please do so. My mouse is not working.
And if your state senator is not listed on this, feel free to drop a comment in the chat and we'll be happy to help you find their contact info.
All right. I just sent an email to my senator, Senator Portantino. Oh, thanks for noting that, Stacy. That's actually a great info. We'll note of that. That is a number that they provided. So we'll make note of that. Thank you so much. That's super helpful. So I
And I
sent.
will,
Go for it.
sorry, I will note that for some of the offices, because some of them may be virtual, sometimes that does happen where the numbers will forward to someone who isn't actually in an office, but is still a staffer. So that may be the case, that may not be the case, but just wanted to flag that. I think any way that we can reach these folks is important.
Great. And I see Sarah sent an email to Governor Newsom. Everybody else, does anyone else want to thumbs up? How did it go? Did you send an email? Was it quick? Was it super easy? Right? Okay, great. I see a thumbs up, so this was easy. And this action guide, you can feel free to use it. Share it with your community members, share it with your neighbors. So yes, encourage everybody, especially Newsom, please send those messages over. They need to hear from everybody. And so now we're just going to open it up for question and answer. I know we provided a lot of information for everybody today. And so we just want to open up the space and allow everybody, if there's a particular question you have, now is the time. We didn't see any questions on the chat, but if you were just saving it till the end, feel free to chime in.
Maybe we can go back to the gallery view so we can see everyone. Yeah, again, if folks have any questions or any ways to, any other ways to reach your senator or assembly member, feel free to ask. And again, if you have to go, just also want to thank Enrique and Sal. I'm not sure is here anymore, but just thank you both, especially for being here today.
I think one thing that's worth noting, which Sarah, you had raised earlier, is that the reason this bill is so important is because it's about equality, and we're not. It doesn't distinguish who deserves something or who doesn't. It's about everybody having access to the right to get out of prison and jail once they've earned it. And so if you share this with family members or friends, this action guide, I want to make sure that point is clear, that any messages to our legislators not drive any sort of distinction. As you heard today from Enrique and from Sal, we are defined more than the worst day of our life. And so, we want to honor that through this bill. And so we can give it another minute or so, but we are so thankful to all of you for joining us on a Monday afternoon. It's not easy, but really thank you. And I know a lot of you are from the Central Valley, and so I personally really am thankful for that. And so to the extent that we can get other folks in the Central Valley to make their voices clear, because this impacts us, it impacts our community here just as much as it does anybody else in California. So we need our representatives to vote yes on this, or at least to hear us on this, and to know that it's important to us.
Are any changes happening in the counties where you discovered all of this secretive workarounds to violate the law?
Willie, no. And I think that's why we have to have like a solution from the state, because we're not getting anything in the county. We have very conservative sheriffs. The Fresno County Sheriff Margaret Mims did issue did announce her retirement a week after the report came out. And I like to think that it was because of this report. But in terms of policy, no. And you know, Sarah did share there are other counties that have taken that step to protect their communities fully, but counties in the Central Valley, for the most part, have not, with the exception of San Joaquin. But you know, Fresno, Kern, Merced, Kings, Madera, Tulare, like none of those counties have taken any steps. And in fact, after the report came out, they were very offended and defensive. So we really need a solution from our state legislators. We need something like this bill to protect everybody. Stacy, I think you had a question.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for being here and making it so easy to understand what's going on. I was just wondering, if it passes the Senate, is it likely that the governor will sign it? And like, you know, once it gets past the Senate, is there more work to be done to convince the governor to pass it into law?
Yeah, I think it's always a simultaneous strategy. So that's why even in the action guide, we have, you know, letters of, you know, emails and calls going to both senators and the governor. I feel like oftentimes senators are working in conjunction with the governor, or there's communication possibly. So you never know. But I do think that if we get it past the Senate floor, it's much easier to get it to the governor's desk and get it passed. But I think we have to do our due diligence to make sure the governor also hears us too.
There's a question from Alma. When it comes to folks that are running for sheriff currently, do you have any opinions? Has there been a talk with candidates about this, speaking of Fresno County? And I think, Reese, you probably have an answer to this. My short answer to this is, you know, usually, you know, I'm sure Sheriff Margaret Mims has already selected somebody who she thinks should be the next sheriff. That county in particular has been on notice since the very beginning of the sanctuary law that went into effect in 2018. We've had meetings with them to alert them about things that we thought were happening. And they, I think what happens, and I think this is important to highlight, is that sheriffs then just, you know, put a band-aid and like figure out a different way to work with ICE. And so, you know, again, I think that's why the solution has to be this bright line prohibition, no exceptions, to not give them any room to maneuver in that way. Yeah, but I don't know, Nolasco, if you had a separate or a different response, but that's been my experience with that.
And I think Nolasco's nodding his head. So I'm just going to add to, yeah, like the other thing to note is that the ACLU doesn't endorse or oppose candidates. And so obviously we won't get too into the weeds in terms of the differences between the candidates here in this space, but we encourage you as a concerned citizen and person who cares about these issues to raise these with the candidates and make sure that they are aware of the concerns and issues that are raised in the report, and that you make them take positions and have stances on these things, because without that, they're not going to talk about it and they're going to ignore it as they have in the past. And as Maria shared, MIMS did already endorse one of those candidates. And so I think those kinds of things are really important to look at.
Can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
I'm just sitting here shocked that you exposed violations and they're just thumbing their nose. And it tells me that the Attorney General's office seems to be asleep. It's a violation. How can you just continue doing it and have no accountability or consequences? And I guess, you know, that's the way it is. And that's awful. It's unbelievable. But maybe someone can comment on what the enforcement mechanism would be for violations if the Vision Act is passed.
Sarah, do you want to take this, or I'm happy to do it, but if you want to take it, you should.
Yeah, I think with the bright line rule, it's much, and narratively, it's much more clear that the Vision Act prohibits all kinds of collusion with ICE from local and state law enforcement. And I think there's a mechanism in there that allows folks to even be able to fight for their rights if violations happen. And so I think the Vision Act is much more protective than past laws. And I think that's why it would be a regional equity issue as well. So that's kind of what we highlighted here.
Any final questions before we close out the evening?